The Sikha we learn today is the Sikha for Yutas Kislev, the second Sikha for Yutas Kislev in Chelik Chof. The Gula von Alter Rebbe Yutas Kislev is given by Yom HaShlishi b'Shavua. The redemption, the Gula of the Alter Rebbe on Yutas Kislev, that he was redeemed, freed from jail, was on Tuesday, the third day of the week. As he writes in his famous letter, and this is the Lashon he writes, as in Yom Shehuchbo Beketev Yutas Kislev, the day that the word Kitev was said twice. We know when you look in the Parsha Breshis, where it talks about the creation of the world, it says on Tuesday, it says twice the word that Hashem saw everything was good. So the day that the Kitev, that is good, was said twice, was repeated twice, which was Tuesday, and it was Yutas Kislev, the 90th day of Kislev. This is Alter Rebbe writing. And when I read in Sefer Tilim, the posik Poda b'Sholom Nafshi, that he redeemed my soul in peace, Yotzosi b'Sholom, and went out in peace. So we see here clearly that the redemption Yutas Kislev happened on a Tuesday. Since the Alter Rebbe himself stresses that his Geula happened on Tuesday, the day that the word Ketei was said twice, so he stresses that it happened on Tuesday. He's verstanding with Pashto, so it's very simple to understand. That the contents, the meaning of Yutas Kislev, of the Gula of Yutas Kislev, has a connection to the concept, the contents of Tuesday. What is the meaning of the third day of the week? So the Rebbe said the point of the explanation is, the Nekuda of the explanation is, as you do, it's known, what the Rebbe Rashab said, as it is printed in the Sichas of the Rebbe Rashab in Sefer Teira Sholem. So the Rebbe Rashab said, as Yefutza Mainesech Achutza, Hafotzas Teiras Chassidus, the spreading of the Teira of Chassidus that the Alter Rebbe did, mainly it started after Peterburg. After Peterburg is an expression after he went out of jail. He was sitting in jail in Peterburg. So after he left jail, he was freed from jail. That means noch der Gula for Yutas Kislev, after the Gula of Yutas Kislev, that's when the real spreading of the wellsprings of Chassidus started by the Alter Rebbe. And therefore, Kishemi Megifin by Matan Torah Bechlal, just like we find by the regular Matan Torah, as he verbunden mit the Mitzvah von Sholish, it's connected to the number 3. Bifrat ben Zman, certainly concerning time. It says in Gemara, in Shabbos, that there are different things that when Torah was given was connected to the number 3. So it says there, amongst the things, Matan Torah given b'yemet lisla, it was the third day. It wasn't the third day of the week, but it's the third day after Hashem said Prisha. Prisha means they should separate from their wives. So it says Vahibayim Ashlishi, it was the third day. B'yarchet liso in the third month, which is connected to time. So we see that Matan Torah, the Gemara stresses, has a special connection to the time of 3. Al derech says, given by Gili from Pnimis HaTorah Yutas Kislev, the same thing when it comes to Yutas Kislev, which, as we said before, the spreading of Chassidus started then, which means Yutas Kislev is the time when the real revelation of the inner parts of Torah started. And he says in Orah 7 that it's known, the name of the Rebbe Rashab, that he said that Yutas Kislev is called the Matan Torah of Pnimis HaTorah, the Matan Torah of the inner parts of Torah. So it has a similarity to Matan Torah. So just like Matan Torah is connected to 3 in the time, the union of 3, same thing as then given that Yutas Kislev was also the same thing, which is the time when the spreading of Chassidus started, which is similar to a Matan Torah, Pnimis HaTorah. So it was number 1 in Chedesh Kislev, was in the Yarchet Lisof at Chilz Hashonah. It was in the month of Kislev, which is the third month from the beginning of the year, Tishrei Chesh from Kislev. And also it was B'yemet Liso, it was the third day, B'yem HaShlishi b'Shavua, third day of the week. So we see that Yutas Kislev has a shaychus to the number 3, like we find when the game Matan Torah. The explanation. What is the explanation? So what's so special about the number 3? So we found the similarity between the Kislev, the Gula of the Alter Rebbe, the beginning of the spreading, the real spreading of Pnimis HaTorah to Matan Torah. They both were not connected to number 3, but what's so special about the number 3? So the explanation, Yeshlema, the Rebbe says, we could say is like this. The roof to Matan Torah is the specialty. What happened? The special thing on Matan Torah. There was demult is bottle given the Gzeire, El Yenim Leyere Tachtenim, Tachtenim Leyalo Leyenim. It says in Medrash that as concerning Matan Torah gives a mashal of a king that had two countries, Rami and Syria, and he had a decree that the people from Rami should not travel to Syria, people of Syria should not travel to Rami. But then one time he decided, let the people from Rabbi be able to travel to Syria and Syria to Rabbi, let them connect. Same thing, before Matan Torah it says there was a decree by the Eibishter that Elyonim Layerdu L'Tachtenim, the ones above means the spirituality, the spiritual things above should not come down to the Tachtenim, to the low physical world, and the physicality, the Tachtenim, the lower ones, should not go up to above. But by Matan Torah, that Gzeira, that decree was nullified. At that time, what happened then, that there was the connection, the Eibishter made, there should be a connection between Elyon, the above, and Tachten and below. And Dosim Merum is in the Minya von Shlishi. That hinted in the number 3. Rishon Weiss, as I said, first means one. That shows there is a Tchila only one. Sheni Weiss of Pirut. When you say the second, shows already separation. There is already 2. And the Rebbe in the Orah says, or 11, we find that by the creation of the world, it says what happened by Yom HaSheni, what happened the second day of creation. By Yavdil, Hashem separated between the waters. So there's a concept of separation. So number 2 represents division. Zwei besondere Sachen, that there are 2 separate people, which 2 separate things, which is Vikeda Matan Torah. That is like it was before Matan Torah, as Elyon and Tachten seinen Gewinn, zwei besondere Sachen, the higher and the lower. The spirituality and down here the physicality, in other words, the higher and the lower were 2 separate things. Shlishi weiß of dem Chibur from beide Sachen. When you say number 3, that shows that the 2 come together. That's the thing, the glue, so to speak, that puts the 2 together. That's the connection between the Elyon and Tachten. That was what happened by Matan Torah, which simply means that even though before Matan Torah, the others also did mitzvahs, but the fact that this was a mitzvah, something special, did not penetrate into the physical object. The Kedusha that the mitzvah brought down did not stay in the physical object. In other words, any physical object that used to do a mitzvah did not become holy. Basically, it would mean that film that always laid, that film were not holy. It remained secular because there was no connection between the spirituality and the Gashmis. From Matan Torah on, when we put on a pair of tefillin, we take a physical object made of physical leather, and that becomes holy through the mitzvah. There's a connection between the 2. That's number 3. That's the glue that connects between the 2. But the Father is Torah in Yonah Shalom. That's why the union of Torah is peace. The Rambam writes, and the Hilchas Chanukah asks, Kol HaTorah nitna l'aseh shalom b'olam. The whole Torah was given to make peace in the world. Now, it doesn't mean just the whole Torah was given, that if people argue through Torah, you make shalom, you make peace with them. It means it made peace between 2 opposite things. 2 opposite things contradict. Elyon and Tachten, above and below, contradict. Torah was given to make peace between them, to put them together, that they now could go together. And Torah in the Kras Shalom, the Torah is called peace. In Orah 13, the Rebbe brings different sources where it comes out that the Torah is called Shalom. Weil der Inyan von Torah is Schapiro von zwei Hofchim. The Inyan of Torah is the connection, the combining of 2 separate things, 2 opposite things. And Matan Torah made that there should be a combination between the 2 Gashmis and Ruchnius are 2 opposite things, and the Torah made it connect. So this is Matan Torah. And therefore, there's a special thing of 3 by Matan Torah. The same thing concerning the revelation and the spreading of Torah Sachsidus. Kedem Agula for Yutas Kislev is nicht event der Chutze von der Mayonas HaTorah. Before the Geula, the redemption of Yutas Kislev, there wasn't the spreading of the well springs of Chassidus. The well springs of Chassidus, the Mayan is a well. A well is the source of water. That's the source of all the Pnimis Einyonim of the Pnimis HaTorah, the inner parts of the Torah. It wasn't spread out Chutza. Chutza means to the outside. Outside, that's the Tachten, that's the lower one. Taking the Mayonis to Chutza means taking the higher, the Elyon, to the Tachten. Before Yutas Kislev, that really wasn't happening. It happened, but to a certain degree, but not really. Side the Chutza Sheba de Matzmei. Also, the first, the Rebbe doesn't say the word first, but it's concerning the outside part of the person himself. But does sees what's the outside, the Chutza of the person. Onnebedik von sein Seichel, starting Seichel. Seichel already is called Chutz, is called outside. In Orah 14, the Rebbe even says that Meichen, intellect, is called outside, like something that's higher. Emunah is higher than Seichel. So this is already Chutz. Certainly, Seichel, legabe the Etzem HaNefesh, legabe the Nefesh itself, which is beyond all, way beyond, is also Chutza. So before Yutas Kislev, there wasn't such a spreading of Chassidus Chabad, which brings the inner, deeper parts of Torah to the outside. So it wasn't there to the outside of the person himself. It wasn't yet really put into the Seichel. even though Chabad was already there before, but it really didn't have the real Chabad that Seichel should really grasp it like it was later. So it wasn't spread to the Chutzah in the person himself, starting from Seichel and all other attributes of a person, which are all outside of the person himself. And also the outside, simple outside. That means learn Pnimis HaTeire bepirsim, to learn Pnimis HaTeire in a very public way, verspreiten sie bechol mokim bis in die Weitstädte, to spread it all over, even to the furthest places. So before it is Kislev, that wasn't, which is a similarity to before Matan Torah, the Elyon and the Tachten did not meet, did not get combined, connected. Same thing here. The Mayones of Chassidus were not connected to the Chutzah, which is the opposite direction. That's Mayones is very, very high. This is low. It wasn't there. When the Guluf in the Kislev is aufgetan, mir Futze meine Seche Chutzah. And the Guluf in Kislev accomplished that now there was the spreading of the well springs into Chutzah. The Dugmas Chibur Elyon Tachten from Matan Torah, similar to the connection of the above to the below that happened by Matan Torah. And as we said before, this could be the reason. From the time, at least one of the reasons, for the Alter Rebbe forbids Angula mit Amiras Apostle Poda B'Shalom Nafshi, that why the Alter Rebbe connects his going out from jail into Kislev with saying the Posik Poda B'Shalom Nafshi. In other words, he connects his redemption to the concept of Sholem. And it's like we said before, the combination of two sides is called Sholem. Same thing here, Valdos is the Teichen from Sholem, because what happened to Kislev is the concept of Sholem, to take the Elyon and the Tachten and put them together. This will also explain the connection, not only to the number 3, which we said number 3 represents the connection of two sides, but also that the Alter Rebbe stresses that this day is a day shehuchbal beketev, the day that the word kitev, that is good, that Hashem said is good, is said twice. But the Alter Rebbe is mevdai b'mechtove. The Alter Rebbe stresses in his letter as ein guli given nit stam b'yem shlishi b'shavua. He says not just plain it was Tuesday, nor in them talk was huchbal beketev. He also mentioned it was the day that kitev was mentioned. Obviously, that's also negaya to dinya that we said before, that the Kislev represents when it started the combination of the Elyon and the Tachten. Why? This that on the third day in creation, David said Kitev twice, shows Kidu. It's known, and the Ha'ora 16, the Rebbe brings that it's hinted in different places in Gemara and in Pirush HaMishnayos, hinted that what is the union of double Kitev? So it hints of Kefil HaTev, the double Tev is usually used Tevel Shemayim and Tevel Bria, something that's good for heaven and good for people, something that's good for above and good for below. And twice Kitev means it's good for both. But the Tev Kofel, this idea of having the double Tev, is an inyan for Chibur Elyon v'Tachten. That's the inyan of connecting the above and the below. The Tev is b'chibur b'yachad l'shamayim l'brias, is good in connection and together shamayim and brias. Twice Kitev, one good for shamayim, one good for brias. That fits what we said before, that's what Yutas Kislev accomplished, the combination of the mayones, the high things, to the low. And the Tev Kofel is mutgish b'myuchat and teres achsitis. And this idea that there is a double Kitev in the higher and the lower was mont von Aiden Beit Chsoves. That's connected, that's hinted in Chassidus, because in Chassidus we find these two extremes. There are two sides. Usually they're separate. To combine that, you can have something that works for both, that both are involved. That's the union of Kitev, L'Shamayim L'Brias, that's the Kitev of Sholem. Where do we see in Chassidus that it has to do with the higher level and the lower level, and it's for both? On one hand, the union of Chassidus expects a person to do the Aveda between him and Hashem in the highest level. That's Shamayim. Which means that you should serve Hashem absorbed, that you should be full of the Mayones, the wellspring of Chassidus, the wellsprings of Torah. So that's Chassidus is given to a person in a high level, that you should go very high. Leidach, on the other hand, Mon Chassidus, the minyan from Aves Yisrael, B'Sabrias Ba'alma, Vidar Alter Rebbe, Mavaya Baruch, and Sefer Tanya, Perik Lamed Beis, Perik Leib. Chassidus expects a person to get involved with the lowest of the people. In the 32nd Perik of Tanya, which is Lamed Beis, which is also the word Leib, which means this is the heart of the Tanya, the heart of Chassidus, is that you have to work with and be mekarev every single person. It says in Pirkei Avos that Aaron Nakayan, Eiv Shalom, Reiv Shalom, Eiv Sabrias, Karvan Loter. He loved peace and he did peace. And Eiv Sabrias, he loved the Brias. What does that mean? He loved every single person. Why did they say Brias? Brias means creatures. Should have said Eives Odom, Eives Yehudi. So the Alter Rebbe explains. It means that he loved every person, even those people who have no milas. Their only positive thing is that they're created by Hashem. That's all they are. So they're very low. And Chassidus expects, and the heart of Tanya expects a person with the heart of Chassidus to connect yourself to them too. So on one hand, Chassidus is for the highest level to go higher and higher, also for the lower, because Chassidus is made for both because it combines both. Noch ha'inyan in them. There's another thing here. The Aved of Chassidus is Avas Ishayich. The Aved of Chassidus is such a thing that's connected with Yisayrim Azuvas Nem Tarum. Not only connected, it contains Al Eden. It's made for all the Eden. Chassidus is made for everybody. It gives a derech naveda for the Shemayim, the higher people, and it gives a derech naveda for the Brias. And it tells things for both. It's again because Chassidus combines both. The Alter Rebbe is madish, he explains it. The Alter Rebbe stresses, gleich in dem Sharbet von Sefer Tanya, right in the cover page of Tanya. And he quotes the posik, that to serve Hashem is very close to you. The posik says, in your mouth, in your heart to do. So on that posik, the Alter Rebbe quotes the posik on the cover page, on the Sharbalat, and he says, that means as jeder idar, every id has to know, as es is elecha farim, korb made. That for every yid, to you, who's the you? Every single yid, it's close for him to serve Hashem. And he continues in this cover page, and in the Sefer he goes into more at length, the Sefer of Tanya. He says how every yid could accomplish the Avodas Hashem the way it's explained in Tanya, in a long and short way, whichever shot you mean in that. But he says that everybody could do it. So here at this point, he's saying everybody means the lowest yid. So on one hand, he says everybody could do it, and that's the beginning of Tanya, the Sharbalat of Tanya. So it's everybody can do it, even the lowest. Leidach, on the other hand, is that Alter Rebbe Madish, the Alter Rebbe stresses something that has to do with a high level of Eden. So on one hand, he stresses the Tanya for the simple people. Also, he says every simple person could do it. And then the same thing he says to the greatest people. He stresses as even a person who's already in the level of Shemayim. Then the Avedi Baim Shein Ayin for Regilus and Teve. A person whose Avedas Hashem became so strong that this became his nature. He's used to it. That's his habit. It's his nature. But he says that if a person is like that, and he doesn't work on even growing higher, because he already reached a very high level, in Tanya he says that person is called Lei Avode. There's a pasuk that says that there's a person is called Avode, Eved Elikim, serves Hashem, and Lei Avode doesn't serve. So he says, doesn't mean one is a bad person, one is a tzaddik, one is a rasha. Lei Avode goes on to tzaddik. But a tzaddik that stops and doesn't continue going higher is called Lei Avode. He's not serving Hashem. You always have to worship, serve Hashem. More than you used to. Whatever you get used to, now you have to go higher. If you don't go higher, you're called an Eved Elikim. You're an Eved, but you're not an Eved. You're not working. You became an Eved, but you stopped. Eved means you're working. So you should be an Eved, not a Le'avod. So he's talking to who? To a very high person. First, he says he's talking to every single person, the lowest of the lowest, and he says to him, "Korev elecha," it's close to you. He's telling this low person. Then he tells the high person that as high as you are, you have to serve too. You have to work. Oh, you have to go higher. When the Bible and when you say that, the Alter Rebbe is telling us, even this, that you are so high and nevertheless you have to go higher, is also close and easy for you to do. Ayid could think, since he's already in the level of Shemayim, why do we accept him to go even higher? So the Alter Rebbe says, as even for this Aveda, that the highest person is so high, should even go higher, you were given the proper strength. Because as his Korev made for Yedidness, close to every Yid. So this all fits into the idea that Chassidus is the idea of taking the highest, bringing it to the lowest, similar to Matan Torah, which is the union of Sholem, and that happened after the Kislev, and that's the union of three, the combination of the two that puts it together, and that's the union of Chassidus and the union of Matan Torah, etc., etc. Like in Bir Omer in the Uftu, Based on what the Rebbe says, based on what we said before, what is the specialty of Yutas Kislev? At least one of the great chidushim of Yutas Kislev. That based on what we said before concerning that Neich verstehen im Kesher zwischen der Gula of Yutas Kislev and Sefer HaTanya. We'll understand the connection between the Gula of Yutas Kislev to Sefer HaTanya. We know there is a connection with Tanya. Where do we know that? Because it's known as the Nun Gimel Yem, what the Alter Rebbe is given by Meiser, seine Keneged, the Nun Gimel Prokim von Tanya. The Alter Rebbe was in jail for 53 days. There are 53 chapters in Tanya. So it's known, it's brought down from the Friedrich Rebbe, Sefer HaSichos Tov Shin Gimel, that the 53 days in jail was Keneged, the 53 Prokim of Tanya. And the Geule for Yutas Kislev, and the fact that the Alter Rebbe was redeemed from jail on Yutas Kislev, he given his chus from the 2 Jahr Chayes B'Teira V'Aveda was der Tanya hat meise given zwischen Chassidim. What was the chus that got him out? The fact that this was 2 years since, the Rebbe will say, since Tanya was printed till the Alter Rebbe went to jail was 2 years. Those 2 years, this Tanya added life, Chayes, in the Teira and Aveda of the Chassidim. Was the Pfarrer der Alter Rebbe gewollt, the Tanya soll sein, Kislev. That's why the Alter Rebbe wanted the Tanya should be finished. We know the story. The Alter Rebbe, when it was printed, and he pushed and pushed, he wanted the Tanya should be finished on Yutas Kislev. The fact was it got finished a day later. So, but the Rebbe says, why did he want it? Because obviously he knew that what Tanya is doing is going to make the goal of Yutas Kislev. Because the schus, like we said, the schus of Tanya made it. And so he wanted that the Tanya should be finished by Yutas Kislev, and it'll be connected to Yutas Kislev. Pilot was finished later. That's why there was a little bit more time that he had problems, and he got stuck in a different house, etc. He had problems into Chov, and that's connected to that. Pilot Tanya was finished printed by Chov. So we see here that the days of jail are the union of jail, which is connected to the Gula, came because of the Tanya. So warum afapia the Atfosef from the Sefer given mit 2 Jahr Kedem der Gula of Yutas Kislev, even though the printing of Tanya came 2 years before the Gula of Yutas Kislev, before he was put in the jail, before he was redeemed. The Tanya is gedruckt b'shnas Tov Kuf Nun Zayin. Tanya was printed in the year Tov Kuf Nun Zayin, and the Gula given b'shnas Tov Kuf Nun Tes. The redemption was in the year Tov Kuf Nun Tes. So how could we say that the printing of Tanya is connected to the Gula? Is over the Chidush from the Sefer Tanya. This that Tanya represents, what Tanya brought to the world, the Chidush of Tanya, the Gabe andere Drusha Chidush, even the Gabe other Maimorim of Chassidus that Alter Rebbe said, is verbunden with Nuft of Yutas Kislev. That's connected to what happened on Yutas Kislev, the special Yutas Kislev. Now, what's the connection between Tanya and what happened on Yutas Kislev? So, and the Rebbe said before, based on the explanation he gave before, we'll understand that. The Rebbe said we'll understand this. According based on the expression, the statement that the Rabbi made, that the Tanya is Teresh B'Ksav Shel Teresh Chassidus. That the Tanya is called the Teresh B'Ksav. In Torah we have Teresh B'Ksav, that's the written Torah, that's Chumash, and then you have Teresh B'Al Peh, the oral Torah. Tanya is called the Teresh B'Ksav Teresh Chassidus. So we say that, why is it called Teresh B'Ksav? So simple pshat is because this is almost the only thing that the Alter Rebbe himself wrote. The other Maimorim we have from the Alter Rebbe, he said, so the Rebbe say, Verständige Pashtas, we understand simply, the fact that we give a title, that this is the written Torah, we give it on Tanya, is not nur der Fall, but that Alter Rebbe hat im Allein geschrieben. It's not only because that's something that Alter Rebbe himself wrote. Nicht wie the Drush Chassidish Leib, was gesagt, not like the other Maimorim that he said orally, und sie seine verschrieben geworden, seine Talmidim, and they were written by the Talmidim of the Alter Rebbe. Weil der said, the Teres Magid und Baal Shem Tov, seine geschrieben geworden, bläst durch Talmidim, nicht durch sie allein. Baal Shem Tov and the Magid, the same thing. They didn't write their Teres. Any Teres that we have written down in Svarim from the Baal Shem Tov and the Magid, all written by his Talmidim. So by the Alter Rebbe, also like that. Tanya was something he wrote himself. So you would think that that's the reason why it's called Teresh B'Ksav, which is maybe the simple reason, but it's not only that, it's more than that. Why is Tanya called Teresh B'Ksav? No, weil the Yachas from Sefer Tanya to Shar Teresh Chassidus is bedugmas hayachas from Teresh B'Ksav to Teresh B'Al Peh Kedil Kamen. Because the relationship of Tanya to the rest of Teresh Chassidus is similar to the relationship of Chumash Teresh B'Ksav to the oral Teresh B'Al, as the Rebbe says, as I will explain. And this is what he explains. The chiluk from Teresh B'Al Peh and Teresh B'Ksav, the difference between Teresh B'Al Peh, the oral Teresh, and the written Teresh, which is Chumash, Und achilik welche bringt achilik laloche bepeil bei for the mudam. It's not just a difference. It's a difference in gei laloche. The way you're supposed to learn it. What's the difference? By Teire Shebiksav, the din is Avdel Leodam my Komer but Teire Shebiksav. Teire Shebiksav, even if you don't know what you're saying, the words count. You could give an aliyah, it says to an Amhoretz, doesn't know a word that's being read, but the words are there. So therefore, since Teire Shebiksav, the main thing are the words, so you can give an aliyah. But on the other hand, by Teire Shebal Peh, Dafke Keshemevin, but Teire Shebal Peh, oral Teire, it's only considered learning if you understand. So it comes out like this. In Teire Shebal Peh is being negay the Avon and Vasoge from the Minyan Alim. But there, Teire Shebal Peh, main thing is done, the concepts, the logic, the seichel that's there in what you're learning. So it's not so important, the exact wording and exact letters that it's written, even though they have certain yonim and they're exact, but not the same way. Schenken Teire Shebal Ksav, but in the written Teire, in Teire Shebal Ksav, jeder Os muss geschrieben werden bediuk. Every letter has to be written exactly the way it's supposed to. Und the Iker thereby is the Kriyas Eises. And the main thing of learning Teire Shebal Ksav is reading the words, reading the letters. So that's the general difference, Teire Shebal Ksav and Teire Shebal Peh, even La Halacha. Based on how we explained Matan Torah before, we'll understand why by Dafke Matan Torah this happened, that the Torah was written. It came into writing on parchment, so to speak. For Mafal Pia Dirinya von Liban Torah given Matan Torah, even though learning Torah was before Matan Torah, like it says, from all the days of our forefathers, never was there missing a yeshiva. They even wrote down things of Torah. The Rambam writes, the Chiber Bei Svarim, that Avram wrote Svarim in his philosophy and his inyonim that he knew about Hashem. He wrote books, and he notified Yitzchak. But das also hat nicht gehabt im Geder von Teire Shebal Ksav. Even the things he wrote was not Teire Shebal Ksav. Didn't have a din of Teire Shebal Ksav, which means the book that he wrote, it was not holy. By us, a Sefer Torah, where you have the words written, is holy. It penetrates into the physical letters. That happened through Matan Torah and after Matan Torah. And he explains why. Based on what we said before, since before Matan Torah, there was this decree that the above should not come down and the things from down here should not go above. That means there was a separation between the Elyon and the Tacht, the higher and the lower. He says, so that same thing happened by Torah. As a given der Elyon, you had the higher level of Torah, which is the Ruchnius from Torah, the spirituality of Torah, which is the Avone Vasoge, which was the understanding. So you had that, but der Elyon hat jeder given them Tachten. That was separate. It didn't come into the Tachten. Haksive Vasefer Shekosva did not have anything to do with the things they wrote. As Olver Nachefetz Kedusha, the thing that he wrote down did not become a Chefetz Kedusha, a holy thing. And in order 27, the Rebbe says, we said before they did write down, that wasn't because there was a concept of writing it down, there was something special in writing. It's just for them to remember. The Rebbe says here, it was only Lofarsim to be able to publicize it. And Eises Machkimis, we look at the words, it makes you understand better, it helps to your memory, etc., etc. But there was no concept of having Torah, which basically is Seichel, because before Matan Torah, it wasn't Teire Shebal Ksav. Basically, Seichel should combine and connect, come down into a piece of paper or a piece of parchment, whatever it is. Dafke Nordem, was his bottle given the Gzeira, only when the Gzeira between the Elyon and the Tachten was nullified. So what happened was then, the above should come down to below. That means Torah, which is basically a Seichel, Elyonim, is a Rabbi Kuman in Maise, came down in a physical action, Torah Shebal Ksav in the writing. But it's same thing, that writing was godly. Before the writing was not godly. Now it became that the godliness of Torah, which is the Seichel, turned into a physical thing, was connected to the physical thing. But now, we're holding, when we hold the Sefer Torah now, after Matan Torah, we're holding a chayfetz shel gedusha. The object is holy. The gedusha entered into the object. And this is not an inyan when you read in Torah chas v'sholem. And it doesn't mean that Torah became lower, a descent. It's not the same high level as before. No. What we're trying to say is that the same high level has connection to the low level. Nor v'Torah is imaisa in Ksav, when the Torah came down in a physical action, in being written, is das Michtav Elikim. It's the writing of godly writing. It's godliness. That's the chibur eliyut natachten. That's the connection from the higher and lower. That's what happened by Matan Torah. That's the complete explanation, and that's a different Torah Shebeksav and Torah Shebal Peh. And that's what's going to be the idea why Tanya, is called Torah Shebeksav. There is a Sefer Tanya with the Alter Rebbe had geschrieben. That same thing is Tanya. The Alter Rebbe wrote in an Eifen as jeder also sei meduik betachlis. Alter Rebbe wrote it, not just Tam, he wrote it in the other Maimonim, he said. Each letter was very, very meduik, was very exact. The Kveit Kedushas Meir Rechomi Admura, that's it, like the Friedrich Rebbe said, Al Alter Rebbe had geschrieben the Tanya b'meshech 20 years. It took him 20 years to write the Tanya. The Gora, he took away, he subtracted, took things away. The Diak b'chol teve v'teve was medayik in every word. He made it so purified, it's so clear that there was nothing missing and nothing too much. And when he gave the Tanya to print, he begged the printer, he should be very exact, careful with when he's checking it. Everything should be exact, nothing missing and nothing more. So here we have the concept of Pnimis HaTeirah. Tanya is the depth of Pnimis HaTeirah. It was mislavish. It came down into physical writing, which is like Teirah Shebeksav. But so Dias Lapshus from Pnimis HaTeirah in Neish Shebeksav, this putting in the Pnimis HaTeirah into the letters of writing is Ein Zach mit Inyan Hagula for Yutas Kislev. That's one thing, the same idea as what Yutas Kislev represents. Yutas Kislev caused that the mayonnaise should be spread in chutza outside. The mayonnaise should be Torah is on upcoming in chutza. That the well springs of Torah, which is the high level, should come down into the outside, which is low. That's what the Tanya is. Tanya was written the highest level, but came down like Torah Shebiksav in its level, that it came down by Matan Torah into the low level. And just like what we say Lagabe Torah, the written Torah, ad nit nor was in iris kol ganz Torah Shebal Peh. Not only is all of the oral Torah included in Torah Shebiksav, like the Gemara says, Leke mided aler misa be'raise. It says in Zohar actually, but in Gemara it says something similar, that there is nothing in Torah Shebal Peh that's not hinted somehow in Chumash, in Torah. But even that was revealed later, but it was all included in Chumash. It includes what came later. It also includes everything that was there before the Torah was given. The same thing as Tanya. That you have all kinds of things from Chassidus included in Tanya. Even those things that Alter Rebbe said before he wrote the Tanya. It's all in the Tanya. Like by Torah Shebiksav, everything of Torah before is included in Chumash. Here also, everything that the Alter Rebbe said before is included. The Rebbe says you could say more. Not only everything the Alter Rebbe taught before is included in Tanya, but more than that. The Baal that the Baal Shem Tov, the Maggid, the Mazera Teira, and the Verschrieben sind, the Baal Shem Tov, the Maggid did not write down their Teira. It was only oral Teira that was only written down by his Talmidim. Und mit Teres Chassidus Chabad hat der Alter Rebbe gebracht, die Nyonim von Chassidus HaKlolis in Avon Vasoge. And the Alter Rebbe took all the Nyonim of Chassidus that were there before by the Baal Shem Tov, the Maggid, and that's called Chassidus HaKlolis, and he brought it down into Teres Chabad, which is those Nyonim to be in Chochmah, Bina, Das, and understanding. And where did it all start? On the Hebrew for Sefer HaTanya. It started in Tanya. Kum Tuis, it comes out as in Sefer HaTanya, is eine gebracht, bixaft, the Nyonim von Teres Chassidus HaKlolis. But in Tanya, you have everything, even the Teres of Chassidus, general Chassidus, which is from the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid, not specifically Chabad, but it's all hinted in Tanya, because Tanya is similar to Teres Shebiksav. Golanan is verstanden. From all this, we understand the the importance, the special importance of learning Tanya, which is, as we said, the Teirah Shebiksav and Teirah Chassidus, the written Teirah of Chassidus, was durch them limud by learning Tanya. Within learning Chassidus, generally speaking, general Chassidus we learn, which means other Maimorim we learn. That so through learning that will be Zeich merit very soon to learn the Torah of Mashiach. For Sinyoni is what's the union of Torah of Mashiach? Pnimis HaTorah. Mashiach is going to teach us Pnimis HaTorah. Where do we see it? B'Loshen Rasha, like Rasha says in Shir Hashirim, that Mashiach is going to teach Seid Taimeo on Mistarts for Niseo. the secrets of its reasons, and whatever is hidden within the hidden things in Torah. And that's Pnimis HaTorah. So if we learn Tanya now, which includes everything, and we learn Chassidus B'chlal, so that will be zeicha to hear the Pnimis HaTorah from the Pip Shel Mashiach, from the mouth of Mashiach, very, very soon in our days.